Today we're together with Chris Balme. And first of all, Chris, warm welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly on the first try.
Yes.
Even on the try before
Yeah.
recording, you did it right. Yeah.
So, Chris, the reason we are talking today is I got an email from Blake Boles, who we have had as a guest on our podcast because he have written a book with the fantastic title, Why Are You Still Sending Your Kids to School or Children? I can't remember it correctly. And he wrote me an email and say, hey, you know what? I think you guys would enjoy talking with Chris. So why don't you invite him? And he also have a book coming out. So here we are. That's
Perfect.
more or less what I know, Chris. So here we are.
A book.
All right, we're starting press.
Do
Blake
send
is
your kids to
amazing.
school.
Yeah, that's the title of your book.
Well, this
Well,
book
then
is
we have a conversation.
exactly. Yeah, Blake and I have this debate all the time. I have one foot in the system. He has all body parts, limbs outside of the system, and we're trying to find ways to bring some of these ideas of more self-directed learning for those folks who are still in the system or not. And this new book, which comes out today, it's so exciting to talk with you both on launch day, is all about helping middle schoolers go on adventures so that they can figure out how awesome they are and change the story of middle school, which has got to be one of the saddest stories of any part of the education system.
Why?
Yeah, I was also wondering, can you expand that? Because I find the whole thing very sad.
I agree with you.
So define middle school first. For those who are not American, that would be including myself. What is middle school?
In the States, well, a curious signal about how confused this time is that it doesn't have a clear definition, but the most common is grades 6 through 8, ages 11 through 14 in the US.
Okay.
Varies by year, give or take here and there. And I think most people, at least in the US and at least some other countries I've been to, would say this is the worst part of at least the K through 12 system. And the amazing thing to me is how we replicate this story and tell kids like, oh, this is going to be rough. This is going to be awkward. I hope you get through it as quickly as you can. And to me, that is such a signal.
How can it be quick?
Yeah,
it's number of years. That's like very logical to begin with.
Yeah. And I mean, from the brain science perspective, it's one of the most fruitful times of growth of our whole lives. Actually, your brain never grows faster than it will after that. So we can do so much better. And that's basically my whole work has been trying to design better experiences for middle schoolers in particular, and schools, out of schools, and now through this book, getting them out into the world.
What made you write a book? Because that's quite a big task to jump into.
Personally, I can't not write. It's just something that my brain does to make sense of the world. I've been writing ridiculous numbers of journals since I was 9 years old. But this book came around as 12 years ago. I was starting a laboratory middle school, kind of an experimental school that would be much more student-centered, much more getting them out in the world. And we were trying to figure out how do we need some kind of a framework so that we don't just default back to the old traditional ways and the old traditional curriculum. So our thought experiment was, could we create a framework of curriculum that was only experiences? So you couldn't define anything, that was, English Unit 3, but just only experiences. And we interviewed people from middle school age through late in life and asked them, what do you remember the most positively about the middle school years? And of course, after people got done sharing their the traumatic side that many of them had, a lot of them said it was things like, I started a business, I got my first job, I went camping by myself. All of these things. And so we just compiled this list. And in the last 12 years, we've been testing it with kids all over the world, in school, out of school, homeschool, all kinds of things. And so this book is the 50 things that we think really work for middle schoolers to go get out there.
Yeah. What is number 35? Just to be curious. No.
Okay.
Let's see how good you can.
Good thing I have a copy here. Otherwise. Okay, number 35. Let's start there. Number 35 is, it's called Train Your Brain. And it's about different kinds of meditation, but trying to not do it kind of the way that has been forced on a lot of kids of, sit down, be quiet, kind of the compliance side of meditation that can be the dark side of it, and rather have them feel like it's just tuning in. To use the old hippie word, it's tuning into what you're noticing. Favorite way to teach it, amazing teacher at our school was, kids would walk in the morning when they were doing this, and there would be like a single strawberry in front of each kid. And the challenge was just eat this strawberry as slowly as you possibly can. And that's your meditation, just noticing things like that.
And is that really on the curriculum nowadays? Because one of my hardships with the public school system is that when I hear about it, we don't have our kids in it, but when I hear about it, it has become so controlled what people need to learn on which time, etc., that I can almost be afraid that there's no room for what you wanted with your book.
I agree. I mean, that's why I think most of this book is about things that can happen outside of school hours, where kids take more agency. And I think you're fans of Peter Gray's work as well, and that's been a big influence. And he was kind enough to write a blurb that's on the cover of the book about basically this is a way to keep your spark, keep your curiosity during years when otherwise school can shut it down. I think middle schoolers, maybe of any age group, are really babied and underestimated, kind of treated as younger, less capable people than they are. And if they start to believe that story, that's really the worst outcome of all. So this is about things that they can do where they realize that they're powerful and that, for most of human history, these were people who were out there doing things in the world for other people and feeling more and more valuable as a result. I think we've lost that a little bit in school. So this is meant to jailbreak them a little bit.
It's meant to inspire things to do outside of school.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I can share more of the some of the challenges if you want.
I have 1,000 questions.
Yeah, please fire away.
I don't know where to start because I have a really big problem with the word curriculum, and you mentioned that, but maybe we should skip that. Then I feel like I just have to unload my whole chaotic brain right now.
Yeah, please.
Also, I'm thinking about what is the trauma, the middle school trauma?
Yeah.
And can we reverse it by doing something fun for the rest of the time? So if we are complying to the school system and we're giving up 30, 40, 50 hours a week to that, can we fix all that trauma by doing something fun on the weekends? Maybe we can. I'm not saying we can't. I think you're trying to solve the same problem as we're usually talking about solving by not doing school. So I'm just curious.
It's on my mind too.
Are we just putting a patch on the problem by having fun on the weekends, or can we actually solve it? And if we solve it, my guess would be that school makes even less sense for the kids.
I think
once they start getting agency and having some real experiences in life.
I think you're right. It's I guess the way I think about middle school is first and foremost developmentally, and does school let kids do their developmental work or not? And I think, unfortunately, traditional school directly blocks a lot of the developmental work that middle schoolers need to do. And that's why I think we see it as a rough and traumatic age more than anything else, because we're getting in their way. For example, it's the most socially motivated time probably in the whole human lifespan. As all your radar to read the social world has turned on. You're flooded with new information you never noticed before. And all you want to do is figure out how to make sense of that.
Yes.
If school says, talking with your friend is cheating or is disruptive, will be punished, then you're fighting, the strongest social drive ever. And everyone's frustrated. But I do think for kids where there isn't an option, there's no way to get out of the school system, that having other parts of your life that are developmentally aligned with you, that let you do your developmental work around identity and connection and contribution, that's only positive. And yes, it would be better if they could do that all day, every day. But anything's better than...
I'm thinking maybe even creating that gap and making even more dissonance and making the school feel even less meaningful. It can hurt during the years of being trapped in that system, in case you are actually trapped in that system. But having a feel of the other thing and knowing that okay, it actually does not make any sense. I just have to get through it because that happens to be my circumstances. It's probably better on the long run, even though it's not necessarily better in the moment.
I think so. I mean, yeah, I mean, middle schoolers are so smart and they can code switch. They can understand that there are different games we play in, different parts of life with different rules. So I think it's better for them to have access to a better game, even if it makes the other game more aggravating as a result. And they might make different choices if they have more liberty in high school, maybe to select their path. That could be informed. They could keep more of a sense of agency versus one of the things that makes me so sad about traditional education is how passive kids become. They've kind of like given up on the hope of making this interesting for themselves or letting their curiosity lead. So if we keep that alive, even in the outside hours, and of course, some schools are good at keeping it alive inside school, then, all the better.
Yeah, it seems like there's a growing number of alternative schools, and a lot of the projects I hear about both in UK and the States, I can tend to look back at Denmark and being like, ooh, we don't have that many free schools and alternative schools, as I think there is a growing movement worldwide that people want something different for their kids. So I think it's growing. What are your favorite of the 55 to do personally?
Yeah. My personal favorite is there's one that's called Be a Stealth Artist. And the challenge is to create a work of art and then install it as if it was meant to be there in some other place. Like hang it on the wall
Oh,
of your favorite cafe, for example, non-destructively, but just to realize that, art is meant to break rules and move someone else, and putting your art up where it's not technically supposed to be. I think there's something about that that speaks to the adolescent urge to start to change the world a bit.
yeah.
That's the one I like.
I
I
really
like
like that
it.
one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, but it
I
talks
remember an
into,
American teenage girl we knew. She did as a prank. I can't remember. Was it for Valentine's Day with a friend, not a boyfriend, not a romantic interest at all, a friend. They did the most awkward couples photos where they looked really weird and as if it was these posed couples photos. They did a lot of them and they framed them and then they put them in all of their friends' houses
oh, yeah,
on the
I
shelves.
love that.
Just
Wow.
everywhere. They made, I don't know, 25 and just put them up. That's really funny.
yeah,
That was actually, that's kind of what we're proposing there. Same, except it wasn't
Exactly.
art. Was it art? Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like art.
But it was a fun idea.
yeah. And
Oh,
it reminds me of some of the street art I love the most is these, as you say, non-destructive, but with a quirky smile on, where they have done something wonderful. And I mean, it just makes me smile and it makes me happy
Modifying
when I
street
see
art,
them.
street signs.
Modifying
Yeah,
street
that's fun.
signs, and
It's
it's
always fun.
yeah, it's super wonderful.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think there's something that's a part of the gift that adolescents have to offer the rest of the world, is to kind of modify our old routines. And if we let them, that's how they keep us alive, I think also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been thinking recently about, I had a really good conversation a few weeks ago with a transformational leader friend I have about the things we keep talking about. We keep talking about unschooling, my husband and I, because we're unschoolers, and I will keep talking about unschooling because I think it is one of the best strategies for allowing for our offspring to make sense of the world as they grow up. But actually, unschooling is a way of solving the problem that the school system we have and basically the whole culture around bringing up children, it's very outdated. And in many countries, not so much in the country we come from, which makes us a little bit off sometimes when we observe it. But in many countries, the relationship between parents and children and between teachers and children is very, very much not leveled. So it's a very top-down thing where we are way more equal with our children and teenagers in our society, our former, where we came from before we became nomadic. So the problem really is that the way we do childhood doesn't really, it doesn't exist in harmony with the reality of the society the kids can clearly see they will be part of when they are 25, let's say. And we think unschooling is a very good way of, if we just take schooling out of that system, we take the whole idea of curriculum out of that system, then it becomes way better. But there are other ways to do it. And what you propose is one of these other ways to do it. We're trying to solve a problem, and there will be several ways to solve it. So even though having fun in the weekends is not going to not be painful weekdays, maybe, do you think there is a spillover effect?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's also each kid's journey, through this can be so different. So, I have 3 kids. One goes to a traditional school, one goes to an alternative school, and one I'm unschooling. So I feel like I have hands in all
Oh,
of these
you've got
different,
the whole thing, yeah.
very confusing, but that's because of what they've chosen and what seems to be working for them. There are kids that want the huge thing that school has is so many other kids.
Yeah.
And there are kids that just want that social environment, but are maybe not being served by other parts of it. So, yeah, I think anywhere we can get this in around the edges and help them, like I was saying earlier, when they do their developmental work, then they make developmental progress and they go beyond the kind of belonging is everything stage. You've got to start there, but then you can go beyond it to figuring out, how do I achieve things? And then how do I achieve something that's authentic to me, where I'm bringing myself out into the social world, knowing their consequences. If they can tinker toward that in some part of their lives, I think it affects how they show up in all parts.
So, Chris, there is one very obvious thing that just came to my mind, which is we haven't mentioned the title of your book.
Oh,
We just started talking. Yeah. So please tell me about the title of your book. And also, as I said, we got this email from Blake. So I actually didn't look into if this is your first book or if where are we with the whole Chris? Tell me a little more about yourself, the name of your book, and your way to it.
Yeah, so this is book baby number 2. So the first one came out 3 years ago. I thought actually this one was going to be the first, but it took longer to gestate. So the first one came out and was called Finding the Magic in Middle School. And that's really to help adults make sense of middle school and understand developmentally, whether you're in school or out of school, just what are kids driven to do at that age so that we can help them and not accidentally battle them, which so often happens. But the whole time I was writing that book, I was thinking, I really want to write directly to kids. And so that's what this book is. So it's called Challenge Accepted, subtitle 50 Adventures to Make Middle School Awesome. And it's written completely for kids. Everything in there has been tested by lots of different middle schoolers all over the world. And it's basically, after a short intro, it's a choose your own adventure kind of style. 50 short chapters. Each one gives you kind of a why this might be cool. Feel free to cross this out if it's not cool to you, but if it speaks to you, here's why it might be cool. And then like a very practical, here's how to do it. And that's it. That's the complete book.
Nice.
11 to 15 was the age?
Yeah, 11 to 14 in the US.
14,
okay. A lot happens.
I would accept the sneaky
art.
Sneaky art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would accept that one. I like that idea.
I think one of the most fun ways to use it, if you're going to bring it into a family setting, is to have the kids give the parents the challenges. And then in the course of choosing one for their parents, they may notice some that they're intrigued by as well.
Yeah.
Could be.
So how is the plan to get the book used? Is it through the school, through the teachers, or is it through the parents that give it to their child? What is your plan with it?
Yeah, my dream with it is that kids discover it by accident. I think that's the ideal way. So I had a Kickstarter campaign to help produce it, and everyone who supported it, I'm sending them extra copies and asking them to leave them in random places where a middle schooler might walk by. So I think that would be my dream. They just see it, they're like, what is this strange, colorful book, and flip through it. Second to that would be that some adult who's just really cool and intriguing to them, their cool aunt or someone like that, just passes it to them. Check this out, no questions asked, kind of thing. And then, of course, parents and teachers are very welcome to give it as well, but sometimes that comes with more complications or expectations.
But that has to do with that ruined relationship I talked about before.
Yeah.
I mean,
True.
some children actually do trust their parents to come up with good ideas, even in the middle school age.
Totally. Yeah, I really
I'm just
appreciate
saying
you
you
saying
could
that.
also, I mean, a lot of relations are good, and we could also build on that, and maybe it would be even good for a struggling relationship between a middle school child and the parents, that the parents read the book first, came up with,
like
hey,
that.
we could do all these fun things instead of doing chores and math and whatever extracurricular adult composed
Exactly.
free time kind
Yeah,
of way we
I
spend
totally,
the time that we have, the precious time we have together.
I
We're in this
totally agree.
situation right now that one of our kids have just left us
Wow.
Just for a
Yeah,
month.
for a month
yeah,
to go traveling with her boyfriend. And you sit back with, I mean, we have a surplus of children, so we have enough to play with, but you get that feeling, they
yeah,
are really precious, the hours we have with the children. So even the slightest little, I'll force you to empty the dishwasher. Why would I? Why would I sacrifice the conversation we could have had, or the fun we could have had, or the music we could have heard, or whatever, in order to do some sort of top down trying to think that I can teach you how to be a good person? I think we've learned a lot about how to handle life and how to be a good person, how to have fun, and how to live in accordance with your values and all these things from our children, exactly when they've been in these years between 11 and 14. Damn, they're wise. They really are.
exactly.
Yeah, we see it with our youngest. Sometimes, then like I find myself talking to him like he's a young one, and then sometimes when he talks, I'm just like blown back, and it's like, oh yeah, you're 13 and a half, and
Yeah,
oh man, you have so much on your mind. Sorry,
yeah,
because he's my little one, you
Yeah, we
know.
kind of forget because he's our fourth child and he's 13 years younger than the oldest. I want him to be little.
Yeah, just
He's
some
not
years
little.
more. No. I remember how it was when I was young myself, and all the thoughts I have when I was in this age group. And you don't feel respected by adults often.
Oh, because you are not respected.
yeah. It's an accurate sense. Yeah,
It's just because you can see right through things.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's, so many parents, traditional or non-traditional, are so shaken up by this age because they don't see that the speed of change is shocking. And that's why maybe it's also one of the best chances to reset your relationship, because you're going to be, unless you're really aware of this, you're going to be kind of shocked and have to constantly update your model of who your child is. Maybe it's the chance to break out of the old kind of boss, adult control mode and
Well,
be more of a companion. Yeah,
the sooner you do that, the better.
exactly. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
It's going to
really
get rough during these years if you don't.
Yeah.
They will let you know.
Chris, which of the challenges are your kids most tired of? If you have used them as tryouts, they're like, Dad, not
Not
again.
that one. I'm not
Yeah.
doing any more random art, putting it up and
Yeah,
down.
exactly.
Garage
That's a
door.
good question. I have to say, my own middle school daughter was definitely the most ruthless editor of this book. She went through it with grit and held nothing back.
Yeah.
Let's see, what are they? I'm just flipping through it here. The one that she wants to do next is kind of a classic one. It's to create a time capsule and kind of take some memories from this age with her best friend and bury them in the backyard, which I think will be fun. So that's next on her plate. Let's see. My own child rolled her eyes at the challenge that is called Find Awe in Nature. It's like, yeah. But I do know other kids who really enjoyed that one. So, that's the choose your own adventure style of it.
I have done some time capsules, mostly for fun. One was when we rebuilt the kitchen, and then I put in a note underneath where it just said, "Why did you break down the kitchen?" Just me having fun with it.
You also put something under a floor once.
Yeah, I also
remember.
put something on the floor. One of the floorboards was broken and needed to be changed before we moved out of an apartment, and I slid in a note, and I think that is 20 years ago maybe, and it still hasn't I have never heard from them. No,
we had some very good parties in that apartment. So
yeah. Wow, that's actually great inspiration. This is the adult version maybe of challenge accepted.
Well, we did it with the kids. I think maybe also just our mindset is I'd like to read that book. I mean, but we do these kinds of things with our children. That's the only thing when you said let the child find it and randomly do these things. A lot of things we do project style. We like to do them together. We like to find projects like this. Could be go for a walk. It could be do an art project. Could be whatever kind of time capsule. Right now we're doing hand dolls to make theater. We usually try to find something where at least we're a family of a lot of people. We're accumulating as our children have romantic relations now. So we have 4 children and 2 sons-in-laws now. So we're usually a lot of people, at least 3 of us before we start a project, because we realize that, as you said, the social part of it. And I think, yes, it's huge in middle school years, but it's huge in life, really, social life. I want to be social. I don't want to miss out on spending time with people I love.
Yeah.
So we make these kinds of projects, and we usually, at least if 3 people are interested, we'll start a project. It's very rarely we do things on our own.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it speaks to how well you've maintained those relationships and not fallen into the usual trap of feeling more and more distant as they get older. Yeah.
Chris, I'm still curious on you. You're from California, and I haven't heard enough about you. Which career did you end up in? As you're writing about middle school, I presume you ended in a teacher role. And how did that happen?
Very accidentally. I mean, I was a really frustrated and unhappy middle schooler and high schooler myself. I went to very traditional schools, and I remember walking out of the high school building thinking, I will never set foot in a school for the rest of my life. And of course, that was a challenge to the universe that requires more sense of humor than I had in that moment. And, lo and behold, 4 years later, I became a teacher. And I had a long, windy road in those 4 years.
That was a short never.
Yeah, it's a very short never. But I think I didn't know it then, but I feel now like I was kind of called to that because I had some healing to do. There was something there that was kind of unfinished business for me to think about. Why did it have to be so bad, or did it have to be so bad? And I feel pretty strongly it did not. And there are ways to make kids' adventures much more adventurous and not kind of being dragged through. So to make a long story short, I've always kind of worked, I guess, on the fringes of the school system, you could say. So first thing I did for 10 years, I ran an apprenticeship program. The idea was to let middle schoolers go do awesome apprenticeships in any possible kind of job and just connect with the world and see that there's so much out there, people willing to bring them along. We had kids like learning how to fly.
Was your role then to find the places?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the most awesome you found? Did one of them have an apprenticeship as an astronaut or something wild?
I wish. Still waiting for that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the very first year we started that program, one of the first kids we got said, we asked for 3 choices, and he said the same thing for all 3. He said, pilot, want to fly a plane. And I was like, oh, great. How are we possibly going to make this happen? And I remember talking to my co-founder, and we said, we're going to make one phone call, and if it doesn't work, we're going to tell him, you've got to give us some other options. We make one phone call to a local small airport flight school, get this wonderful guy named Dave, explain our situation. We've got a 12-year-old. This is all he wants to do. And he said yes on the spot. It's like, sure, I'll teach him how to fly. So, Okay, well, that was a lesson for me that I had underestimated how willing people are to respond to a really motivated kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember crying on the side of the runway while this kid took off in a small Cessna plane, at the controls. So it's possible. And over 10 years, we had 17,000 apprenticeships that we created.
Wow.
So almost every job you can imagine, including some that seem like they might be too dangerous to do. Kids were involved in. And I just think to me, it's one of the most basic ways that we can welcome kids into the world and educate, but it's not commonly done.
Yeah, I
So
think,
With
and
the
it's one of
same,
the best ways to learn. I love learning from people.
exactly, it's what we're wired for, I think.
Yeah.
So I did that for a long time, and then I wanted to start a school. So I felt like this is a program that gets to plug into schools, but could we redesign the whole school and make it something much more kid focused, much more developmentally aligned? So I created a lab school, and that's most of what I've done since then. And it's in that kind of sometimes awkward place where it's still a school and there's still curriculum, that word, but it also is, I think, a much more kid focused place. They have much more agency.
And you call it a lab school, or
Yeah,
what
we
did you
called it
call
lab
it?
school basically to
Yeah.
try to give ourselves permission. And we were working with some universities here on the West Coast who wanted to put some of their research into action. But we thought if we call it that, then maybe people will know that we're doing experiments and take it
Yeah.
less seriously in a sense, or give permission that we can try something different and some of them will not work. And that's part of it.
It's one of the thing I praises my school time for is that the teachers we had, there were three teachers that went together and were inspired by a local alternative school, and we became an experimental class in the public school system. And it was only 1 or 2 weeks a year for 3 years, but it meant so much to me that we went out and all subjects we had were centered around one thing. For example, an excursion to a local stream, and then math, history, etc., etc., etc. Dived into that one, and I think it has helped form my holistic mindset of trying to understand things. That when I go into a thing, I try to get the wholeness of it. So I think making these lab-like schools will help many, because I personally would probably, if I went to school today, have a whole alphabet.
you'd get all the letters.
Yeah, I would get all the letters you could give someone. But I survived on having a big motivation and a big dreamy heart and mind. And then I dove into some things that was really fun.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's essentially how the school that I helped to start works. It's all interdisciplinary projects and
Yeah.
then adventures out in the world, in
And
nature, in the city.
That's the school, our only school child have been in as well. It was just based on what the kids want to do and on projects.
oh, yes.
Yeah, so
And
it's the
even
same
though
idea.
I had I praised my school for having had that, I remember as a parent, I was afraid when I heard about what Cecilia planned for our daughter to go to this alternative free school. And I am the one of me and Cecilia who haven't went to university. I made projects. I made a film like going to high school, and then when people have a gap year, I took 6 gap years
Love
and
it.
stuff like that. But at the same time, and I mention it because it's just fun how stuff can flick in our mind like that. I saw myself as a rebel who did what I wanted to, but when my own oldest daughter should start the school, I was like, "Ooh, a free school? That's ooh, I don't like that. Can we get normal here?"
Yeah.
Which was what I've fought for so many years, and I
Isn't it
don't know how
weird
it happens yet,
uh, the
but
scary
I
feeling
think normal creeps up on us.
does,
Yeah.
does, and we
Well,
hear
it
these
has a lot
voices
of
coming in.
momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're social cued creatures, and we just get unconsciously tugged back to that as a safe place. But it's not that safe, actually, if you think about what can be lost there.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing. All the things they don't do while they're trapped in that system is quite scary, and all the skills that are not developed.
I'm curious about the connection from Blake. How have you two met, and what is the connection? Is it the learning, or are you just know each other from old times?
Yeah, we were connected by a kind of radical teacher who's one of these people also who's straddling these worlds of school and unschool. And I think at first it was around my first book, or even a little before that came out, we started talking about how we, being writers and getting these messages out. I started when the pandemic started, kind of like an advisory program for middle schoolers from all over the world that could just connect online and more or less make sense of what it's like to be an adolescent and have spaces for really honest, brave conversations about that. And Blake was thinking of doing some similar things. We've shared a lot of ideas around that. But just it's become a wonderful friendship. We just spent a couple days together cooking up all kinds of crazy ideas and reading each other's writing. It's so helpful. Back to the importance of being accompanied on your adventure, to have good company, people who are wanting to walk the same trail.
So, being a writer, then I guess this isn't your last book. Are you already working on something new?
Yeah, you know me too well already. Yes, I've got probably about five something news in my mind. The
Mm.
project that I promised myself I'm going to do next after this book launches is a novel. Because personally, I'm starting to feel like the freest space I can imagine to think through ideas I want to think through is fiction.
Mm.
So,
And which genre of fiction are you in then?
which genre? I think it'll be, I'm really taking inspiration for this project from Ursula Le Guin. I don't know if you know her work, amazing American sci-fi. So I think it'll have science fiction aspects to it. She writes really beautifully about how, she contemplated kind of being a philosopher, but felt like, no one's going to read this, no one's going to connect with this. But if I write through story, I can weave my philosophy in a way that might really come to life in other people. So that's my hope with it.
Yeah, I love that. I actually just had a long dialogue with our oldest son, Storm, about science fiction because he asked me, so, Dad, why is science fiction your favorite genre? And I thought about it, and the answer that came to me was actually, it's not because I like spaceships. I actually don't care about spaceships or anything of all this. It is because I see it as thought experiments of what if this happened and continued. A lot of them is a satirical view on something, a strain in society. And then if you enlarge that during 200 and 300 years, I
Yeah.
actually find science fiction as some of the most critical of our current society, where they are just taking one thing and then they're enlarging it. And as I said, spaceship doesn't do a lot for me, but
Yeah.
often
Yeah.
that is the setting because it's kind of easier to accept than a parallel world. It's easier to see it some years in the future. So I personally love that about science fiction.
I'm the same way, and I love spaceships. So it has everything I could ever possibly want. But I have
Okay.
to recommend a
Yeah.
book. So The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin is one of my favorite books of all time. And it's exactly that. She takes these two societies and just follows them for hundreds of years. One more capitalist, one more socialist communist. And it's not a simple story. It's not like, oh, one of them turns into a utopia. It's two complicated societies with people interacting. And I love it. It just makes me feel so alive
Yeah.
to read.
I will read that as my next one. And if I must give a recommendation back, then there's an Italian author who actually made me want to learn Italian on a level where I could read some of his books that hasn't been translated into English. He's
Should be able
called
to do that.
Yeah, he's called Stefano Benni, and in one of his books, there's just this idea that made me laugh all the time. It is, I think it's the one called Baul, but the idea, and I love it, is that every day at midnight, there's a new subject that you are allowed to talk about, and you're not allowed to talk about anything else for that day. And then it changes at 12. And it's such a good kick in the nuts on society with where people, they just have this like, what's in the news, talk about that for the whole day with their colleagues. And then the next day, a new story in the news. And I just love it that it is by law.
I love that idea, coming back to adolescence, of doing social experiments. Like one of the most fun projects we did at the school I started was, a couple of weeks where students basically they had permission to do experiments on each other, kind of social experiments, and they were trying to learn good experimental design and controls. But, you'd walk down the hall and all of a sudden someone would rush up with, ask you a question, give you a donut, and then ask you another question right after. You knew someone was experimenting on you, not with anything in the donut, but with, how something like that would make you feel or change your mood. I think that's such a fun, playful thing to do with kids.
Yeah.
Can I contribute to the sci-fi
Please.
conversation? Because I actually officially don't like sci-fi.
Okay.
And I feel a little kicked out of the conversation here.
Yes.
I like when I read a novel that I can relate it to my life experience. And sci-fi is outside of that. It works with things that don't exist. And for the most part, I don't like that. But I actually just read a sci-fi novel. I think it would pass as a sci-fi novel. And I read it for the second time. And the reason I read it again was that it's actually so good. I made all three of our still at home children I recommended all three of them to read it. And they are all three of them reading it now at the same time, which is quite fun to read the same book.
I gotta hear what this is. Yeah.
It's by Matt Haig. You know him, he wrote The Midnight Library. It's called The Humans. And it's just such a moving story about what it is to be human.
Wow.
But as it has an alien in it, it must be a sci-fi story.
Yeah.
There's no spaceship.
Sounds like it's sci-fi. Sounds like you're
but there is someone from a different planet and a different. So I just wanted to put it out there. It's a really, really, really good book. And I keep quoting it and I keep thinking about it. And I might even read it for the third time at some point.
All right. I'm going to get a copy.
I think I'm going to put some quotes up on our very limited wall space in the van. Yeah, it's a really good book. And it's short. You'll read it in a week.
Chris, back to you and your book. So during the writing process, what have made the biggest impression on you of finding these different challenges? Is there one of them or multiple, or in the process of talking with these adolescents all over the world? What stands out as hey, I learned something here?
I think the best, so we've tested it with kids on 4 continents, probably maybe close to 1,000 kids now. And I think the thing that stands out is just how fun it is to talk with kids about these, and their sense that, when they're doing it with friends, because most of them are, if not designed to do with friends, they're better with friends. How fun it is to feel like you're sharing the experience. Like sometimes they'll challenge each other. We'll pull one. We made a deck of cards out of them and we'll pull them randomly, kind of see what you get. Are you willing to try it? So less maybe about any one experience, but just like the feeling of like, we're going on a bunch of crazy adventures. We don't know what we're going to do next. We're with each other. Today we're starting a business because that's the card that we pulled. Or, we're going on the challenge I did one with students where this was through the school. They all went solo camping, which for most of them was the first time. But we were in the same kind of broad area. And that was so fun. I will never forget the feeling of the next morning kind of tending this central campfire and middle schoolers just kind of sporadically emerging from the forest, being groggy and telling the story of their night and what they had experienced and, all the outrageous, fears that had come into their minds. So I just think having adventures together, to me, that's kind of the best part of life. And I think for adolescents, especially, that is the best part of life. That's what I want this to create.
Fantastic. I find that a really good place to end the podcast. So if you can share to people where they can read more about you and your books, and also, again, the title of the book, so they can go out and find it.
Thank you. So my name is Chris Balme. You can find me at chrisbalme, BALME.com. And this book is called Challenge Accepted. And it's in all the places, Amazon, hopefully your local bookstore, or they can order it for you. I hope people enjoy it. And thank you so much for having me.
It was fun, and congratulations on the launch. It's today.
Thank you.
Having a little glass of champagne or a
Yeah.
reception. Or...
Coffee first and champagne after.
Champagne later.
Well, it's later in the day over
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
So, fun with that.
And thanks a lot.